Have you ever felt it? That tightness in your chest? Like something's off, even when everything seems perfectly fine on the outside. No one notices, but there's this invisible pressure inside, racing thoughts, shallow breath, a restlessness that won't let go. Sometimes it hits you out of nowhere. Other times, it creeps in just from thinking about tomorrow. So what do? You breathe deeply. You try to distract yourself. You tell yourself, I'm okay. But somewhere deep inside, you know you're not. And then it starts, that familiar cycle. The fear of feeling fear, the guilt for being anxious, the frustration of not just being okay. You've probably been told it's a problem, something you need to fix, that there's something wrong with you. But what if that idea is completely backwards? What if anxiety isn't a defect, but a signal, a message from somewhere deeper inside? In this video, we're not going to hand you a list of breathing exercises or productivity hacks, not because they don't help, but because they're not the whole picture. This conversation might feel uncomfortable at times, but it also might be the beginning of something freeing. Because maybe no one's ever told you this, that anxiety, that deep unease, might not be a glitch. It might be a wake-up call. Alan Watts once said, "The desire for security and the feeling of insecurity are the same thing." That sentence sounds contradictory, but sit with it for a moment. It holds a truth that's tough to swallow. The more you chase emotional stability, the more you cling to control, the more anxious you become. Because anxiety, at its core, comes from resisting what life actually is: unpredictable, impermanent, and messy. We suffer because we're trying to control the uncontrollable, the future. Now, take a second. Think about it. What are you trying to avoid? Failure? Pain? Rejection? Death? Whatever it is, anxiety shows up when we come face to face with the unknown, when we try to push it away instead of sitting with it. And that's not just some vague spiritual idea. Biology backs it up too. Robert Sapolsky, one of the leading neuroscientists today, lays it all out in his book, Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers. The title's a little quirky, but the insight is sharp. See, back in the day, our bodies were wired to keep us alive, to react fast when danger was real. If a lion jumped out in front of a zebra, its stress system would kick in, heart pounding, muscles tensing, adrenaline rushing. And then, when the lion left, the zebra would go back to grazing like nothing happened. Because for animals, stress is temporary. It's based on actual danger. Now, fast forward to us today. There's no lion, but your body still reacts like there is. A text message, a deadline, a single thought can set off that same emergency response. Your body doesn't know the difference between a life or death situation and you lying awake at night worrying about something that might happen. The result? You stay stuck in survival mode every single day. Your heart races, your muscles tense, you can't sleep. You feel exhausted even when you haven't done anything. And this isn't some character flaw. It's your ancient brain trying to make sense of a modern world. Your body is using an outdated operating system to process today's non-stop notifications, expectations, and social pressures. And when that stress response keeps getting triggered again and again without any real danger to fight or escape, your body starts to break down. That natural stress system, it turns into a prison. But here's the question that changes everything. What if you stopped fighting it? What if, instead of trying to force anxiety to go away, you got curious about it?
What if, instead of seeing it as a malfunction, you started seeing it as a message, maybe even a teacher? This video is for those of you who feel like you've tried everything: therapy, meditation, meds, self-help, distractions, and yet that inner emptiness still creeps in. This is for you if you're tired of running from yourself. Here, we're going to look at anxiety through a completely different lens, not as a monster to defeat, but as a mirror, a reflection, a call for change. It won't be easy, it won't be quick, but it can be powerful. Let's start by going deeper into that first truth, the one that Watts saw so clearly.
Alan Watts, in The Wisdom of Insecurity, hits us with a truth we rarely admit. We live in constant anxiety because we're addicted to the idea of control. We crave security so badly that the craving itself creates insecurity. Let that sink in. The more you try to control life, the more life slips through your fingers. We humans spend most of our time in our heads, stuck between a past that's already gone and a future that hasn't even happened. We obsess over what might go wrong. We make plans to avoid chaos. We try to outsmart uncertainty. But in doing all that, we miss the only thing that's real: this moment. And the tragedy is, life isn't built to give us guarantees. Nature is fluid. Change is constant. You are always evolving. But instead of embracing that, we cling to plans and routines and rules, hoping to outmaneuver the inevitable. That resistance, that refusal to accept reality as it is, that is what creates anxiety. Because here's the thing: anxiety isn't some random mental glitch. It's your body and mind reacting naturally to the absurd idea that life should be stable. We fear silence. We avoid stillness. We numb ourselves with busyness, with distractions, work, relationships, beliefs, goals, anything to feel like we're in control. But the truth is, nothing is fixed. Everything changes. Everything ends. And the harder you try to lock life into a box, the more anxious you become. Watts says it like this: the search for security is a contradictory desire. When you seek to feel secure, you are precisely assuming that you are not, and that in itself is insecurity. So, what's the real source of anxiety? Not reality. Reality just is. Anxiety comes from our refusal to accept it. We try to hold on to waves instead of learning to surf. We want guarantees in a universe that guarantees nothing. And in the process, we forget how to live. Watts reminds us that the more we obsess over planning, the further we drift from actual life, the one that's happening right now. There's no freedom, he says, without surrender. And anxiety? It starts to dissolve, not when you fight it, but when you understand it. Not when you escape, but when you show up. But that's just the mind. What about the body?
So far, we've seen how the mind's obsession with control can create anxiety. But we can't stop there, because this isn't just happening in your head, it's happening in your body too. And that's where Robert Sapolsky comes in. In Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers, Sapolsky drops a powerful observation. Animals in the wild, like zebras, don't suffer from chronic stress the way we do. Why? Because they only activate their stress response when there's actual danger. If a lion appears, the zebra's body shifts into emergency mode. Adrenaline surges, heart races, muscles get ready to run. It's all hands on deck. But once the lion leaves and the danger is gone, the zebra's body resets. It goes back to baseline. No lingering tension, no spiraling thoughts, just back to grazing. Now compare that to us. We're not running from lions, but our bodies react like we are. You're lying in bed, replaying a conversation in your head, thinking about next week's meeting or a worst-case scenario that hasn't happened, and boom, your stress system kicks in. Your heart speeds up, your breath shortens, muscles tighten, and the worst part? The stress doesn't shut off. Because in your mind, the lion never really goes away. And so your body stays on high alert every single day. You might be safe, at home, on your couch, but your brain doesn't know the difference. It reacts to thoughts the same way it would to actual danger. And this constant activation starts to wear you down. What was once a survival tool becomes a chronic condition.
This is where it gets physical. Anxiety doesn't just feel bad emotionally, it hurts your health. Sapolsky shows us how this kind of long-term stress messes with your digestion, your hormones, your immune system. It leads to real issues: insomnia, fatigue, inflammation, even heart problems. Your body wasn't built to stay in fight-or-flight mode all day, every day. But that's exactly what modern life demands. And it's not just about what's happening now, it's about what might happen. Humans have a gift, or maybe a curse, called anticipation. Unlike animals, we don't need a real threat to feel afraid. We just need the possibility of one. Think about that. You can be perfectly safe and still trigger a full-blown stress response just by imagining something going wrong. That's how powerful your mind is. But it also means that your nervous system gets hijacked by thoughts over and over again until anxiety becomes the new normal. And this is why so many people feel like they're falling apart. We're not weak. We're not broken. We're just using a biological system designed for a completely different world. A world of survival, not TikToks, deadlines, or existential dread. Sapolsky says the real tragedy isn't the stress itself, it's that we experience it daily over nothing real. And instead of understanding what's happening, we blame ourselves. We call it weakness. We push harder. We try to out-discipline our biology. But anxiety isn't your fault. It's your system trying to cope with the world it was never built for. And once you start to see it that way, something shifts. You stop fighting your body, and you start listening to it. Now let's zoom out and look at the bigger picture, because there's a cruel irony happening in our world right now. We live in a time of incredible access to information. We know more about mental health, about productivity, about ourselves than ever before. And yet, we're more anxious than ever. Why? Because the more we try to optimize our lives, the more fragile we become. The more choices we have, the more overwhelmed we feel. The more control we try to create, the more we realize how little control we actually have. Alan Watts called this the era of insecurity disguised as progress. We're told to have a plan, to stay productive, to regulate our emotions, to hustle, grind, push, perfect. But deep down, we know something's not right, because no matter how many checklists we complete, life keeps changing. People leave, health fails, the world shifts, chaos returns. And when that happens, when all our systems and schedules fall apart, what do? We try even harder to control. We chase new routines, new gurus, new goals. We consume more self-help, more motivational quotes, more techniques. But it's like holding water in your hands. The tighter you squeeze, the faster it slips away. That's the paradox. And that's why anxiety persists. We're not broken. We're just living in a world that rewards denial and punishes presence. Sapolsky backs this up biologically. Our bodies weren't made for constant activation. And when they're pushed past their limits for months or years, things start to break. Cells age faster. Brain fog creeps in. The immune system weakens. And yet, even in the face of all that, we blame ourselves. We think we're failing because we're tired, because we're anxious, because we can't focus. But the truth is, we're just human, living in conditions that are deeply out of sync with our biology. Both Watts and Sapolsky are saying the same thing, from different angles. Resisting life, whether with your mind or your body, creates suffering. That suffering shows up as anxiety, as fatigue, as that emptiness that no to-do list can fix. But what if that suffering isn't a bug? What if it's a signal?
Let's flip the script. What if anxiety isn't something to get rid of, but something to listen to? What if it's not a problem, but a message? A sign from your body, your mind, maybe even your past, that something needs to shift. Anxiety, when you stop trying to fix it and start paying attention to it, can reveal something powerful, the mismatch between how you're living and what you actually need. It's the tension between your real self and the version of you the world expects you to be. And that friction, that's what anxiety is trying to highlight. Because maybe you're chasing goals you don't actually care about. Maybe you're showing up in ways that feel fake. Maybe you're numbing yourself to avoid a deeper truth. Anxiety can be the wake-up call, the guardian of your inner boundary, the part of you that says, "This isn't it." Alan Watts saw this clearly. He said the real pain comes from pretending, from wearing masks that don't match who we are. To be insecure is to be alive. Pretending otherwise is the recipe for collapse. It's not about appearing strong, it's about being real. Sapolsky adds another layer. Stress isn't evil, it's intelligent. It's designed to keep you alive. But if you ignore it, repress it, or treat it like a flaw, it turns inward. It stops helping you and starts hurting you. So instead of asking, "How do I make this go away?" maybe the question is, "What is this trying to show me?" And once you do that, once you start observing rather than resisting, everything starts to shift. Not instantly, not magically, but slowly, steadily, deeply. That's what we're going to explore in the next section. Because this isn't just an idea, it's something you can practice. And the practice starts with returning to your body.
So, where do we go from here? We've talked about the mind, how chasing security creates fear. We've talked about the body, how it's been stuck in survival mode for years. Now it's time to bring it all together. Because understanding anxiety is just the beginning. To really shift something, you have to come back home, to yourself. Not the version of you that's thinking 100 miles ahead, the one that's here, right now, in your body. Alan Watts used to say that the secret of life is to be completely engaged with what you are doing in the here and now. And that's not just a pretty quote, that's a practice, that's a path. Most of us are stuck in our heads, overthinking, analyzing, predicting, planning, stressing. And the more we live in that mental loop, the more we disconnect from reality, from our actual lived experience. That's why just thinking your way out of anxiety rarely works, because your mind created the problem and it can't be the only tool you use to fix it. You have to drop back into your body. And here's where Robert Sapolsky gives us a lifeline. He shows us that the stress response, the fight or flight system, can be regulated, not by force, but by awareness. Simple things like how you breathe, how you sleep, how you move, all of it matters. It's not about controlling your body, it's about cooperating with it. Let's break that down. When you breathe deeply, especially when you extend your exhale, you send a direct signal to your nervous system. It's safe now. The danger has passed. Your heart rate slows, cortisol drops, the whole stress loop starts to unwind.
That's not some woo-woo idea. That's basic neurobiology. And it's the same with movement. Walking, stretching, dancing, shaking, anything that gets you into your physical body helps complete the stress cycle. It tells your ancient brain, I've escaped the lion. We're good now. Sleep is another big one. Your system cannot reset without rest. When you skip sleep or push through burnout, you're basically telling your body to keep sounding the alarm all day, every day. Even the way you relate to others matters. Secure relationships, people who make you feel safe, seen, connected, calm the stress response better than almost anything. So no, this isn't about positive thinking or pushing harder. It's about grounding, about slowing down enough to hear what your body's been trying to tell you. And maybe most importantly, it's about observation, learning to watch anxiety rise like a wave and choosing not to panic, choosing to be with the feeling instead of running from it. That's the turning point. Psychologists might have just called it surrender. Not giving up, but letting go. Letting go of the need to fix it. Letting go of the urge to escape. Letting go of the belief that you have to conquer every uncomfortable feeling. And here's what happens when you do that. You become bigger than the emotion. Not because you're stronger, but because you're present. Being present doesn't mean life gets easier. It means you stop making it harder than it needs to be. You stop living in the illusion of a future you can control. And you start experiencing the one thing that's actually real. This moment. The breath in your lungs. The feeling of your feet on the floor. The sound of your voice. The warmth of sunlight on your skin. That's reality. And that's where healing starts. Because when you reconnect with your body and stop treating it like a machine that's broken, anxiety loses its grip. Not because it disappears, but because you're finally listening.
We've covered a lot in this video, but if you take one thing with you, let it be this. Anxiety is not a flaw. It's not proof that you're weak. It's not something you need to eliminate. It's a signal, a messenger. And messengers don't need to be defeated. They need to be heard. That tension you feel, that breathlessness, that deep inner friction, that's life trying to get your attention. You're not broken. You're sensitive in a world that numbs. You're perceptive in a culture that distracts. You're awake in a society that tells you to stay asleep. Alan Watts said that we try to fix the outside world without first fixing what's within. But maybe anxiety is asking you to turn inward, not to hide, but to reconnect, not to escape the world, but to stop escaping yourself. When you stop running, when you sit with it, when you listen without judgment, something shifts. Anxiety stops being the villain and starts becoming the teacher. Sapolsky gave us the science, Watts gave us the wisdom, And now it's on you to bring those truths together, not to cure anxiety, but to grow through it, to let it shape you, to let it wake you up. Because real security, that thing we all chase, it doesn't come from controlling everything. It comes from no longer needing to. So now I want to hear from you. What part of this hit you the hardest? What did you wish someone had told you years ago? Drop it in the comments. You might be speaking for someone who doesn't have the words yet. And if this video helped you look at anxiety differently, hit subscribe. Because here we go beyond the surface. Here psychology meets the body. Here philosophy meets reality. This journey doesn't stop here. The next video might be the next step. I'll see you there.